Good afternoon, Dunsay. My name is Kallie Wood, and my Cree name is Namoya Oche Aski, meaning not of this earth. I am Nakota Cree from Carry the Kettle, First Nation here on Treaty 4 territory in Saskatchewan, Canada. The creators provided a beautiful day outside, as you can see behind me, and I'm very humbled and honored to share voice at this FHQ Developments Indigenous Agriculture Innovation Conference. I would like to thank Thomas Benjo and his team at FHQ Developments. Thank you, hi Miigwech, for this kind invitation to be part of this exceptional conference. Knowing our roots and growing our future is a perfect theme for furthering Indigenous participation in the agriculture industry today. Respect for soil, air, and water, and plants and animals, and caring for Mother Earth is essential to the future of our children, our grandchildren, and those not yet born. We are in a significant time and place in our country, a time we're working towards reconciliation and acknowledging our shared histories and truths and understanding that we are all treaty people. That we are all connected is so important to move this country forward. My journey has brought me today to a position working with the Government of Saskatchewan in the Ministry of Agriculture as the Senior Indigenous Advisor. The theme of this session is Walking the Path Towards Reconciliation. What does walking the path towards reconciliation look like in agriculture? I will share with you what we're doing here in the Ministry of Agriculture in Saskatchewan, and I hope that it will encourage you in the next 20 to 25 minutes or so to perhaps shift mindsets and break down barriers or that fear of approach that all too often exists in today's relationship building and engagement opportunities. I broke it down into 4 sections. And first and foremost is building the foundation internally, so personal and professional growth and understanding. It's really important to recognize where we've come from in order to know where we're going, and our history shows that to us. So what we've done here in the ministry is set up an Indigenous engagement framework. And what that has allowed us to do is have a suite of information for internal staff to go in and to educate themselves on what exists in our province. Understanding treaties, understanding treaty land acknowledgements, First Nation communities, our Métis region, and our locals. We also have Aboriginal awareness training that goes across the Government of Saskatchewan, as well as some of the ministries have what's called 4 Seasons of Reconciliation, which is a local learning platform that really shares the history of how we can move forward. We also have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and 94 Calls to Action. We do reporting on that across Saskatchewan as ministries. Also, the internal education that goes on, we're bringing in guest speakers and elders to really bring that Indigenous knowledge and wisdom to share internally with our agriculture experts that are working. Understanding the protocols of First Nation culture, the exchanging of tobacco for sharing wisdom and knowledge, which is a sign of respect. Also, the understanding of treaty land entitlement, duty to consult, and building meaningful relationships with First Nation communities, the Métis Nation Saskatchewan, and their leadership. One of the events that we have coming up is Orange Shirt Day, and this is something that is acknowledged across Canada. Chief Dr. Robert Joseph, who is the Ambassador of Reconciliation Canada, is coming in and speaking with all Saskatchewan public servants, along with His Honor, the Honorable Russ Morasti, who is our Lieutenant Governor of our province. This is just an example of some of the things that we're doing here and things that you can do in your own organizations or things that you can do in your own circles of influence to really start having meaningful conversations about how to move forward. How do we bridge the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people and provide opportunity and economic development and capacity building, and most importantly, relationship building. Building that trust and those relationships is so important on opportunity building. Secondly, I wanted to talk about implementing change and how we can better provide supports and programs in agriculture and build successful partnerships and relationships. One of the things that we do here on a federal level is the Canadian Agriculture programs. And that's about programs and policies. So reassessing existing programs and policies within our own ministry in Saskatchewan and looking for inclusivity and ensuring that any barriers are removed for accessing programs. sharing voice in each branch throughout the ministry as they design their yearly work and learning plans and strategic objectives is so important as we move forward with relationship building. So the Ministry of Agriculture in this past year has really reviewed the language used when outlining eligibility requirements to access programming. And as we move into 2022 and we're looking at developing new CAP programs, through the process of looking at and reassessing CAP, the programs right now, it was identified that eligibility requirements were unclear, which may have unintentionally created perceived barriers and discouraged First Nation bands or First Nation individuals for applying for these programs. This was never the intent, and the current language has been updated to clarify that the gross farm income requirement is not required for First Nation bands applying to programs, and that there is flexibility for First Nation individuals to demonstrate that they meet gross farm income requirements with documentation other than an income tax return. This is just one step that we've taken to ensure that the eligibility and that the barriers are dropped. And so one of the things that we're doing is connecting with First Nation communities, the Métis Nation Saskatchewan, to have these conversations on what does programming look like in the agriculture sector. Thirdly is implementing change province-wide and again increasing opportunities in agriculture. One of the exciting things that we've done at the Ministry of Agriculture is we formed a BASES team. BASES meaning the Building and Strengthening Indigenous Supports. So these are our regional experts that are across the province. And they are going into start with First Nation communities. We've created a programs binder that will go out into our communities. And it will be a resource that Chief Council Métis Nation Saskatchewan can go through and find out what are the opportunities that are there and what programs exist for us to be a part of. Coming up on October 7th, we have the Wetaskiwin Sharing of the Land Conference for Saskatchewan First Nation and Métis locals. This is a really important stepping stone for building relationships for the Ministry of Agriculture. And if you notice, a lot of the things that I'm talking about is building relationships. And again, given our history, this is something that we really need to work towards and bringing those two worldviews together. We also have the Prairie Region First Nation Engagement Project. And this is a project that is partnered with Alberta and with Manitoba. And we have hired Stone and Arrow, which is a really great company here that is based out of Saskatchewan. And what they're doing is going into First Nation communities, and they're going to go in and find needs assessments and find out what those barriers are and have conversations about how we can grow in agriculture in this province. The other one is what we are expanding here. Senior Indigenous advisors have been hired across the government of Saskatchewan in different ministries. And one of the things that we're doing here in the Ministry of Agriculture is we are starting an Indigenous engagement unit and hiring further employees to do the important work of strengthening and building Indigenous relationships. The Indigenous hiring strategy and working with post-secondaries for recruitment opportunities in agriculture and creating an environment of mentor and mentee for recruitment and retainment. This is something that is fairly simple to go through, particularly when you're looking at recruitment opportunities to bring in Indigenous staff. What does your environment, what's your culture in your organizations? And number 4 is broadening and building relationships at the federal, provincial, and territorial for capacity building across the land. We engage in many conversations federally, provincially, and territorially to find out what's happening across the country. What are other provinces doing? And that goes back to the mentor-mentee conversation that we just had. So the creation here in the province, we've started a Senior Indigenous Advisors Interministry Working Group. And currently, the government of Saskatchewan has 6 senior Indigenous advisors in different ministries, and we meet regularly to make best use of our collective knowledge, to make a difference and champion change to create inclusive opportunities for Indigenous peoples. And we work together to achieve common goals to create respectful engagement for Indigenous peoples and communities. We also have created the Saskatchewan Working Group on Indigenous Food Security and Food Sovereignty in the North. This is a program a working group that is coming together to really talk about and look at what does it look like for food security and food sovereignty. And given COVID, this is a particularly important conversation. And so we're looking forward as that continues to move forward on where that will take us in relationship building. I think one of the things that I find most, happening with agriculture in this province is really just the fact of sitting down around the table and having a conversation to figure out what are the needs with communities, getting through TLE lands, their lessee lands. What do we do with this land, and how do we build economic development and capacity in our own communities? There's many opportunities out there that exist when you're looking at funding models and when you're looking at programs that are available both provincial and federally. So I just want to close with this. It has taken us 7 generations to get where we are to today in this country, and the change needed is not going to happen immediately overnight. What action can you take back to your circle or to your family or your community or your workplace, your agriculture operations, and ideas to start or grow in the industry to move reconciliation, relationship, and understanding forward? Bringing 2 worldviews together and looking, listening, and learning from one another, I believe, is the key to success. In agriculture, bringing the Indigenous worldview of caring for all that is created and the experiential knowledge of ways of knowing and being, and putting that together with Western worldviews of analytics, statistics, and research is a recipe for success as we move forward in the agriculture sector. It simply is knowing our roots and growing our future, and how do we do that together and bring it all together. I do have 3 resources that I want to leave you with, and this is something that, through my research and my career, this is something that when you're looking at moving forward, having that foundational understanding and realizing why we are where we are today in this country. So I do have 3 books that I want to share with you that you can take back and look at possibly reading and expanding your knowledge base. So this one is called Lost Harvests, and this is a 2nd edition by Sarah Carter, and it's about Prairie Indian Reserve farmers and government policy. This is an exceptional book to understand how we got to today. This is Food Security by Ralph Martin. It's written in 2019, and he's a professor of plant agriculture. This speaks of Indigenous food systems as models for food security. For First Nation communities that are looking at where do we go with our land, we have opportunity. What should we do? Do we do crops and irrigation? Do we do greenhouses? Do we do cow-calf operations or any other agriculture sector opportunities? This is a good place to start to see what do we do with our land. The other one is No Surrender, and this is a book by Sheldon Krasowski. This is a new release as well, and this is a powerful read on truth, relationship, and reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. This also will help you and assist you in understanding of Western Canada's 7 treaties. As I had mentioned earlier, we do have the Wetaskiwin Virtual Agriculture Summit coming up on October 7th that the Ministry of Agriculture is hosting. This is an event for Saskatchewan First Nation and Métis regions to come in and have conversations on what are the next steps and how do we best build the relationship and the partnership to move forward. That event is coming, like I said, on October 7th, and I'm happy to share that with you. And if there's further questions that you have from this session, or if there's anything that you want to touch base on or learn more about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me here. It's kallie.wood@gov.sk.ca, and I know that connecting with FHQ Developments, they'd be happy to connect that as well. So thank you so much, Hi Miigwech, for this, and I hope that you have a really good rest of conference. Thank you.